My name is Sarah, and I have lived in Lyon since my marriage to David 10 years ago. Our life was rather peaceful until the incessant comparisons of my mother-in-law, Evelyn, began to weigh on our daily lives. Every family gathering became an ordeal, a moment where I had to mentally prepare myself to hear the endless praise of Claire, Evelyn's perfect daughter. This Sunday was no exception. We all gathered at my in-laws' house for the traditional Sunday lunch. Evelyn and Jacques' Haussmann-style apartment, located in the 6th arrondissement, exuded elegance and refinement. The high ceilings decorated with moldings, the solid wood floors which creaked gently under our feet, everything screamed Lyon bourgeoisie. The smell of Evelyn's beef bourguignon hung in the air, reminding me that despite her faults, my mother-in-law was an excellent cook. We had barely crossed the threshold when the comparisons began. "Ah, Sarah, have you seen Claire's latest article in Le Monde?" Evelyn said, her eyes shining with pride. She analyzes the impact of environmental policies on the French economy. "It's fascinating, isn't it?" I nodded politely, already feeling the tension building inside me. David squeezed my hand gently, a silent gesture of support. We sat in the living room, our glasses of Côtes du Rhône in hand. Lily, our 12-year-old daughter, sat next to me, immersed in her book. It was an image that should have softened Evelyn, but instead she simply remarked, "Claire also loved reading at that age. But she preferred the classics, you know." At 12, she had already read all of Balzac. I felt my heart tighten. Lily was a wonderful child, creative and full of life. She excelled in the visual arts and had an extraordinary sensitivity to music. But these talents always seemed pale in Evelyn's eyes, compared to Claire's academic successes. The meal took place as usual, punctuated by Evelyn's anecdotes about Claire's successes. "You know, Claire has just been invited to give a conference at Sciences Po," she announced proudly between two mouthfuls of gratin dauphinois. "It's truly remarkable for someone his age." I glanced at David, hoping for him to intervene, but he seemed absorbed in his plate. I knew he hated confrontations, especially with his mother. So, I did what I always did. I smiled politely and changed the subject. "The gratin is delicious, Evelyn," I said, trying to divert the conversation. "You should give me the recipe." But Evelyn was not the type to be easily distracted. "Oh, that's nice, my dear. But you know, cooking requires a lot of precision. Claire has always had a gift for it, she gets that from me. Besides, she told me that she takes French cooking classes with a starred chef in Paris. She is so versatile." I felt frustration building inside me. Every compliment for Claire seemed like a veiled criticism of me or Lily. I turned to my daughter, who was munching on her meal in silence. "Lily, why don't you tell Grandma about the project you're working on at school?" Lily looked up, a little surprised to suddenly be the center of attention. We're doing an environmental project. We're trying to find ways to reduce plastic waste in our neighborhood." I smiled, proud to see my daughter interested in such important subjects. But before I could say anything, Evelyn spoke again. "That's nice," she said with a condescending smile. "Claire was also interested in the environment at your age. But she had a more academic approach. She even won a national prize for her essay on renewable energies." I saw Lily's face fall slightly. My heart sank. How could Evelyn not see the harm she was doing? How could she not understand that each child is unique, with their own talents and passions? The rest of the meal took place in a tense atmosphere. I tried to keep the conversation light, talking about the latest exhibition at the Museum of Fine Arts or recent Olympique Lyonnais matches. But each subject seemed to bring Evelyn back to Claire and her accomplishments. After dessert, a pink praline tart that even Evelyn had to admit I had done well, we sat on the terrace. The June sun gently warmed our faces, and the view of the Saône should have been calming. But I couldn't relax, not with the tension still lingering in the air. It was then that Jacques, my father-in-law, spoke. He was a calm man, who rarely intervened in these family discussions. "Evelyn, my dear," he said softly, "why don't we talk a little about Lily? I'm sure she has many interesting things to tell us." I felt a wave of gratitude towards Jacques. Finally, someone else had noticed the imbalance in the conversation. Evelyn seemed surprised, as if she had just realized that the conversation had been monopolized by Claire all day. "Oh, of course," she said, turning to Lily with a somewhat forced smile. "So, Lily, what do you like to do at school?" Lily hesitated for a moment, then started talking about her art class. Her eyes lit up as she described the project she was working on, a series of paintings inspired by the banks of the Saône. I felt my heart swell with pride listening to him speak with so much passion. Evelyn listened politely, nodding from time to time. I could see she was trying to be interested, even though it wasn't natural for her. It was a small step, but it was something. As the afternoon drew to a close and we prepared to leave, I overheard a conversation between David and his mother. "Mom," he said softly, "you know, Lily is an extraordinary child. She has her own talents and her own passions. It would be nice if you could recognize them from time to time." Evelyn seemed surprised, then a little ashamed. I didn't mean to. I guess I'm so proud of Claire that sometimes I forget to see the others." These words gave me a little hope. Maybe with time things could change. Maybe Evelyn could learn to see and appreciate Lily for who she really was. On the way back, in our little Renault Clio, a comfortable silence settled. Lily fell asleep in the back, exhausted from the day. David took my hand, squeezing it gently. "You know," he said, "I'm really proud of you. You're handling this with so much grace." I smiled, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. Yes, those family reunions were difficult. Yes, the constant comparisons were frustrating. But we had our own family, our own happiness. And maybe one day, Evelyn would finally see the unique beauty of our little Lily. As we drove along the banks of the Saône, the lights of the city reflecting in the water, I felt a sense of peace. Tomorrow would be a new day, a new chance to show the world and Evelyn the wonderful person that Lily was. And no matter what my mother-in-law thought, I knew our daughter was extraordinary in her own way. The weeks have passed since that lunch with my in-laws, and summer has set in Lyon. The days grew longer, filled with the gentle warmth of the south and the scent of linden trees in bloom. Despite the beauty of the season, I couldn't help but feel a little apprehensive. The annual family dinner was fast approaching, and this year it was our turn to host it. Our apartment, located in the Croix-Rousse district, had nothing to do with that of Evelyn and Jacques. It was a converted former silk workshop, with large windows and exposed stone walls. David and I had chosen it for its charm and history, but I couldn't help but wonder what Evelyn would think of it. She who was accustomed to the discreet luxury of the 6th arrondissement. The big day arrived faster than I would have liked. First thing in the morning, I bustled around the kitchen, determined to prepare a meal that would impress even my mother-in-law. I had opted for a menu that highlighted Lyon's specialties, a lyonnaise salad as a starter, followed by a cardoon and marrow gratin, a recipe that I had spent weeks perfecting, and to finish, a pink praline tart. All accompanied by an excellent Côtes du Rhône that David had carefully chosen. Lily, excited by the event, helped me set the table. She insisted on doing the decorations herself, creating pretty place cards adorned with watercolors depicting each guest. Watching her work with such care and creativity, I felt my heart swell with pride. If only Evelyn could see what our daughter was capable of. David, for his part, took care of tidying up the living room and preparing the aperitif. From time to time, he would pop his head into the kitchen to furtively kiss me or whisper words of encouragement. His presence was reassuring, an anchor in the storm of emotions I was going through. At exactly 7 p.m., the doorbell rang. Evelyn and Jacques arrived first, as always. My mother-in-law entered, dressed in an impeccable Chanel suit, her eyes immediately scanning every detail of our interior. I held my breath, waiting for his verdict. "That's lovely," she finally said, her tone casting doubt on the sincerity of her compliment. "Very bohemian." I felt David tense beside me, but before he could respond, Lily appeared, proudly carrying her tray of homemade canapés. "Grandma, Grandpa, look what I did," she exclaimed, her eyes shining with excitement. For once, Evelyn seemed genuinely impressed. "Did you make that, darling?" "It's very pretty," she said, taking a sofa. Her expression softened for a brief moment, and I caught a glimpse of the loving grandmother she could be if she let go of her prejudices. The other guests arrived shortly after: my sister Marie and her husband Thomas, David's brother Lucas and his wife Emma. The atmosphere relaxed with their arrival, filling our apartment with laughter and lively conversation. We all settled into the lounge, sipping our aperitifs, a Cur Royal for the ladies, a local craft beer for the gents. The conversation was light at first, revolving around the latest family news and recent events in Lyon. I began to relax, thinking that maybe this time we could have a nice dinner without constant comparisons. But of course, it was too good to be true. "So, Evelyn," Marie asked, "how is Claire? I heard she recently published an article." Evelyn's face immediately lit up. "Oh yes. It was in Le Figaro. A brilliant article on the impact of Brexit on the French economy. You know, she always had a gift for economic analysis. Already at school, her teachers said she had an extraordinary mind for numbers." I exchanged a look with David. We both knew what was coming next. "It's truly remarkable," Evelyn continued, her gaze drifting towards Lily, who was quietly drawing in a corner. "Of course, each child has their own talents. But Claire has always had this thirst for knowledge, this ambition." I felt anger rising within me. How dare she, in our own house? I was about to say something when David beat me to it. "Mom," he said in a calm but firm voice, "we are all very proud of Claire. But tonight we are here to spend time together as a family. Why don't we talk a little of what everyone has done recently?" An awkward silence fell over the room. Evelyn looked surprised, then slightly annoyed. But before she could respond, I took the opportunity to change the subject. "Dinner is ready," I announced, perhaps getting up a little too quickly. "Shall we?" We all headed towards the table, the atmosphere still tense. I began serving the lyonnaise salad, hoping the food might soothe the spirits. For a while, the meal passed in relative silence, punctuated only by compliments on the cooking. Even Evelyn had to admit that the salad was excellent. But as we began the main course, the cardoon gratin, Evelyn couldn't help but resume her comparisons. "It's really delicious, Sarah," she said, her voice sweet. "You know, Claire has also become an excellent cook. She even took lessons with a starred chef in Paris. She says it helps her relax after her long days at the office." I gritted my teeth, feeling frustration building within me. But before I could respond, Lily spoke up. "Mom is the best cook in the world," she said proudly. "And she teaches me lots of things. Last week, we made macaroons together." I felt my heart swell with pride and love for my daughter. Perhaps she had sensed my distress and decided to defend me in her own way. Evelyn looked taken aback for a moment, not knowing how to react to this innocent but firm statement. It was then that Jacques, who had remained silent until now, intervened. "You know, Evelyn," he said softly, "I think we should be grateful to have such a diverse and talented family. Claire is doing great things in her career, that's true. But look at Lily, she has an obvious artistic gift. And Sarah and David have created a warm and welcoming home. Isn't it wonderful that everyone can find their own way?" A stunned silence followed his words. It was probably the longest speech Jacques had ever given at a family dinner. Evelyn looked momentarily taken aback, as if she didn't know how to react to this unexpected questioning from her husband. The rest of the dinner took place in a more relaxed atmosphere. The conversations resumed, this time in a more balanced manner. Everyone had the opportunity to share their recent experiences, their projects, their hopes. Even Lily was encouraged to talk about her art project at school, receiving sincere compliments from everyone, including, to my surprise, Evelyn. As I served dessert, my pink praline tart which received unanimous praise, I realized that something had changed. It may have been a small step, but there had been a change in the family dynamic. For the first time, I felt like we were all on equal footing, each appreciated for who they were, without constant comparisons. After the guests left, as David and I cleaned up the kitchen, he took me in his arms. "You were wonderful tonight," he told me softly. "And I'm proud of how we handled the situation." I nodded, feeling a mixture of fatigue and relief. "Do you think this will change anything?" I asked, not daring to hope too much. David thought for a moment. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I think it's a start. Mom was surprised tonight, And sometimes that's all it takes to start seeing things differently. As we finished cleaning up, Lily came to join us in the kitchen, her eyes heavy with sleep but her face beaming. "It was a lovely evening," she said, yawning. "Grandma even said she liked my drawings." I exchanged a look with David, feeling a glimmer of hope light up within me. Perhaps this dinner, despite its tense moments, had marked the beginning of a change. Perhaps Evelyn was finally beginning to see beyond her prejudices and appreciate the unique beauty of each member of our family. As we got ready for bed, I promised myself that I would continue to work on this relationship, not just for me, but for Lily, for David, and even for Evelyn. Because deep down, we were all a family, with our strengths and weaknesses, our differences, and our similarity. And maybe with time, love, and understanding, we could all learn to accept and appreciate ourselves as we are. The weeks following the family dinner were strangely quiet. Evelyn seemed to have taken a step back, and our interactions, although still a little tense, had become more cordial. I dared to hope that we had turned a corner, that things would finally improve. That's when the invitation arrived. Claire, Evelyn's perfect daughter, was organizing a big reception to celebrate her recent promotion. The whole family was invited, including us. My heart sank at the thought of this evening. I knew this would be the perfect opportunity for Evelyn to start her incessant comparisons again. The day of the reception, we went to Paris. Claire lived in a magnificent apartment in the Marais, with a view of the Seine. As I entered, I was struck by the discreet luxury that reigned everywhere. Works of modern art adorned the walls, and a buffet worthy of a fine restaurant was set up in the dining room. Evelyn welcomed us, resplendent in a Dior cocktail dress. "Ah, here you are finally," she exclaimed, kissing David and Lily before turning to me. His gaze lingered on my dress, a pretty piece that I had bought from a designer in Lyon. I saw a glint of disapproval in her eyes, but she didn't say anything. Claire came to greet us, radiant in her Chanel suit. She hugged everyone warmly, even me, which surprised me. "I'm so glad you could come," she said with a sincere smile. "Lily, how you've grown. I heard you're very good at art." I was touched by his kindness. Claire had never been unpleasant to us, it was rather Evelyn who created this constant tension. Lily, encouraged by her aunt's interest, began talking excitedly about her latest art project at school. The evening started pleasantly. The guests were a mix of Claire's family, friends, and colleagues. I noticed several important people from business and politics. Claire moved among them with ease, discussing topics ranging from economics to international politics. I found myself in a corner, sipping a glass of champagne, observing all these beautiful people. David was engaged in a lively conversation with a colleague of Claire's, while Lily was quietly drawing on a notebook she had brought. It was then that Evelyn approached me, accompanied by an elegant woman whom I did not know. "Sarah, this is Mathilde Durand. She is the director of a large art gallery in Paris." I shook Mathilde's hand, wondering where Evelyn was going with this. "Mathilde, Sarah is my daughter-in-law," Evelyn continued. She takes care of the house while my son works. It's a simple life, but some people like it, don't they, Sarah?" I felt the blood rush to my face. How dare she describe me like that, as if I was just a housewife with no ambition? I was about to respond when Mathilde spoke. "Oh, but it's wonderful to have someone who cares about creating a warm home," she said with a kind smile. "My husband is a housewife, and I don't know what I would do without him. It's such an important job and often underestimated." I saw Evelyn stiffen slightly, visibly upset that her attempt to put me down had failed. But before she could say anything else, David appeared beside me. "Ah, I see you met my wonderful wife," he said, putting an arm around my waist. "Sarah is not only the heart of our household, she is also a talented freelance graphic designer. She has just completed a project for a major cosmetics brand." I looked at David with surprise and gratitude. It was the first time he so openly defended me in front of his mother. Evelyn seemed just as surprised, her eyes moving quickly from David to me. "I didn't know you were working, Sarah," she said, a note of confusion in her voice. "Oh, it's relatively recent," I replied, finally finding my voice. "I started a few months ago. It's a good balance between my family life and my career." Mathilde seemed genuinely interested. It's fascinating. I'd love to see some of your work. We're always looking for new talent for our advertising campaigns. The conversation continued, with Mathilde and I discussing design and art while Evelyn remained unusually silent. I could see that she was uncomfortable, as if the world she had carefully constructed around her was beginning to crumble. Later in the evening, as I was coming back from the bathroom, I overheard a conversation between Evelyn and Claire. They were in a quiet corner, speaking in low voices, but I could hear every word. "Mom, you need to stop this," Claire was saying, her voice firm but gentle. "Sarah is a remarkable woman, and Lily is a wonderful child. Your constant comparisons don't do anyone any good." "But my darling," Evelyn protested, "I just want the best for our family. You've been so successful, I would like your brother and his family." Claire interrupted. "The best isn't always what you think, Mom. Look at them. They're happy. David has a job he loves, Sarah is balancing her career and family, and Lily is becoming a talented artist. It's a success, too." I felt tears welling up in my eyes. Hearing Claire, the perfect girl, defend me like that was unexpected and deeply touching. Evelyn remained silent for a moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer, almost vulnerable. "I guess I have a hard time accepting that happiness can take different forms. I always thought that success was measured in a certain way. It's time to change that way of thinking, Mom," Claire said softly. "For the good of the whole family." I walked away silently, not wanting them to know that I had overheard their conversation. My heart was pounding in my chest, a mix of emotions swirling inside me. The rest of the evening passed like a dream. Evelyn seemed calmer, more thoughtful. She even took the time to sit with Lily, admiring her drawings and listening to her talk about her artistic projects with an interest that seemed genuine. As the evening drew to a close and we prepared to leave, Evelyn approached me. There was a hesitation in his eyes that I had never seen before. "Sarah," she said softly, I wanted to tell you that your dress is really pretty. It looks great on you." I blinked, surprised by this unexpected compliment. "Thank you, Evelyn," I replied, not sure what else to say. She nodded, as if making a decision. I'd like us to have coffee together one of these days. Just you and me. If that's okay with you, of course." I felt my heart speed up. Was it possible? Was Evelyn really taking a step towards me? "I would really like that," I said with a sincere smile. On the way back to Lyon, on the night train, I thought about this extraordinary evening. David was sleeping next to me, Lily snuggled up against him. I stared out the window, the lights of the towns we passed forming blurry streaks in the darkness. This evening had been a turning point, I was sure of it. Claire's words, David's unexpected defense, and even Evelyn's small step towards me. All of this represented a change, an opening to new possibilities. Of course, I knew things wouldn't change overnight. Old habits die hard, and Evelyn would likely still have times when her old attitudes would resurface. But for the first time in a long time, I had hope. As the train sped through the night, I made a promise to myself. I was going to take this opportunity. I was going to work on building a stronger, healthier relationship with Evelyn. Not just for me, but for our entire family. Because deep down, despite all our differences, we were family. And that was the real success. The days following our return from Paris were marked by a strange feeling of calm. It was as if a long-threatening storm had finally broken, leaving behind purified air and new clarity. I often thought about the evening at Claire's, the words exchanged, the looks, the small gestures that seemed to announce a change. A week after we returned, while I was working on a new design project in our small home office, my phone vibrated. It was a message from Evelyn. "Hello, Sarah. I hope this message doesn't bother you. I was wondering if you would be free for that coffee we talked about. Maybe next Thursday?" I stared at the screen for a long time, my heart racing. It was real. Evelyn was really taking a step towards me. With slightly trembling fingers, I replied, "Hello, Evelyn. Thursday would be perfect. 3 p.m. at the Café des Artistes on Place Bellecour?" His response came almost immediately, "Great. See you Thursday." The next few days were a mix of anticipation and anxiety. I wondered what Evelyn was going to say, what I should say. David, noticing my agitation, hugged me one evening as I paced in the kitchen. "It's going to be fine," he assured me. "My mother is making an effort. It's a big step for her." I nodded, grateful for his support. "I know. It's just, what if I say something wrong? What if she changes her mind?" David kissed me gently. "Be yourself. That's all you have to do. My mother needs to get to know you, the real you." Thursday came faster than I thought possible. I dressed carefully, opting for a simple but elegant outfit: black pants, a cream silk blouse and a light jacket. I tied my hair into a loose bun and applied light makeup. I wanted to look professional and confident, but not like I was overdoing it. The Café des Artistes was a charming place, tucked away in a corner of Place Bellecour. With its wrought iron tables and comfortable chairs, it was a popular venue with local artists and writers. I had been there several times before to work on my projects, enjoying the creative atmosphere and excellent coffee. I arrived a few minutes early and chose a table near the window. From there I could see the square come alive in the afternoon sun. Children played around the equestrian statue of Louis XIV, tourists took photos, and the people of Lyon went about their daily activities. At exactly 3 p.m., I saw Evelyn crossing the square. She wore a crisp beige suit and matching pumps. Her grey hair was styled into a sleek bun. Even from a distance, I could see the tension in her step, the way she clutched her purse a little too tightly. When she entered the cafe, our eyes met. I raised my hand to wave at her, and she walked towards me. There was a moment of awkward hesitation. Should we kiss? Shake our hands? In the end, we settled on a simple nod. "Hello, Sarah," Evelyn said as she sat down. "I hope I didn't keep you waiting." "Not at all," I replied with a smile. "I just arrived." A waiter came to take our order. I chose a café crème, Evelyn an Earl Grey tea. For a few moments we remained silent, each trying to figure out how to begin this unusual conversation. Finally, Evelyn took a deep breath. "Sarah," she said, her voice wavering slightly, "I wanted to talk to you about, well, a lot of things actually." I nodded, encouraging him to continue. "I know I haven't always been the easiest stepmom," she continued. "I realize my constant comments and comparisons must have been difficult for you and Lily." I felt my throat tighten. It was the first time that Evelyn openly admitted her behavior. "It was challenging," I admitted slowly. "But I know you wanted the best for your family." Ravane seemed surprised by my answer. She took a sip of her tea before continuing. "The best? Yes, that's what I was thinking about doing. But I realize now that my vision of best was perhaps too narrow." We spent the next time to speak, really talk, for the first time since I knew Awine. She told me about her own childhood, the pressure she had felt to succeed, and how she had postponed these expectations to her children. When Claire started to excel in her studies, I thought it was the confirmation that I was right, she explained. I thought it was the only way to success and happiness. I listened carefully, starting to understand where the behavior of Ravine came from. It was not an excuse, but it gave context to his actions. "But when you see you and David, and seeing Lily grow." Evelyn has taken a break, looking for her words. "I begin to realize that there are different ways of being happy and fulfilled. Lily has an artistic talent that I have never really taken the time to appreciate. And you, Sarah. I was surprised to learn that you are working as a graphic designer." These words, which I had so long hoped to hear, deeply moved me. I felt tears get me in my eyes. "Thank you, Evelyn," I said slowly. "It means a lot for me to hear that." We continued to speak, our lives, our hopes, our fears. I spoke to Reveline about my love for design, how I was trying to balance my career and my family life. She listened to me with an interest that I had never seen at home before. While our conversation was coming to an end, Evelyn put her hand on mine. It was such an unexpected gesture that I almost jumped. "Sarah," she said, her voice imbued with emotion, "I know that I cannot erase these years of tension at once. But I would like, if you agree, that we were trying to build a better relationship." I felt my heart swells with gratitude and hope. I would like it very much, Reveline, I replied sincerely. When we separated that day, there was a lightness in the air that I had never felt before with Xline. It was not the end of all our problems, of course. There would still be difficult moments, misunderstandings, old habits that will resurface. But it was a start, an opening to something new and better. On the way back, walking along the quays of the Rhône, I called David to tell him how the meeting had gone. He was delighted and relieved, telling me how proud of us he was for having taken this step. That evening, when we dined with the family, I observed Lily telling her day at school, her eyes brilliant of excitement while she was talking about her latest art project. I thought how extraordinary, unique, perfect in her own way. And I realized that it was the real success, having a loving family, being faithful to yourself, to continue your passions. Later, once Lily lying, David and I seated on our little balcony, looking at the Lyon lights to sparkle in the night. You know, I said slowly, I think things will really change now. David shook my hand. I think so too. It won't always be easy, but it's a new start. While we stayed there, bathed in the sweet evening breeze, I felt a deep feeling of peace invade me. The path had been long and sometimes painful, but we were finally on the path of a real mutual understanding. And it was, perhaps, the biggest victory of all. The weeks that followed my coffee with Reveline brought a subtle but significant change in our family dynamic. Our interactions, formerly tense and clumsy, have become more relaxed and natural. Owain started calling me regularly, not to criticize or compare, but to make real news, to be sincerely interested in our lives. One day, WH.En fall was starting to tint the trees of Lyon from Rouge at Door, I received an unexpected call from Orline. Her voice was shaking slightly when she asked me if I could go home the next day. I have something to show you, she said, a note of nervousness in her voice. Intrigued and a little anxious, I accepted. The next day, I made the journey familiar to Reveline's apartment in the 6th arrondissement. The air was fresh and lively, with the smell of dead leaves and hot chestnuts sold by the streets. AWBLY welcomed me to the door, dressed in a beige cashmere sweater and black pants. Her hair, usually wearing an impeccable bun, was slightly ruffled, as if she had passed her hands in several times. Between, Sarah, she said with a nervous smile. The interior of the apartment was as I had always known, elegant, ordered, with old furniture and classic works of art with the walls. But today, something seemed different. There was energy in the air, palpable tension. Orling led me to her office, a room where I had rarely entered. It was generally the lair of his charitable activities and his correspondence. But today, the office was in disorder, papers and boxes scattered everywhere. I was putting storage, said Amble, noticing my surprised look. And I found something. Something I think you should see. She went to a large cardboard box placed on her desk and released a worn leather photo album. Her hands were shaking slightly when she opened her. It was my mother, she said gently. I hadn't looked at him for years. She turned a few pages, then stopped on a black and white photo. She showed a young woman, probably in her 20s, standing in front of an easel, a brush in hand and a big smile on her face. She's my mother, said Owain, her voice barely more than a whisper. Before she meets my father, before she became, well, the woman I knew. I looked at the photo, fascinated. The young woman on the image radiated with joy and creativity. Her eyes shone with a passion that I recognized, the same that I saw in Lily's eyes when she drew. Was she an artist? I asked gently. Owain hosted her head. She wanted to be. She studied at the Fine Arts in Paris. But when she met my father, her voice died. What happened? I asked, feeling that there was more of this story. Ravane has taken a deep inspiration. My father came from a very traditional family. For him, art was just a hobby, not a suitable career for a woman of good family. He convinced my mother to abandon her studies to get married. I felt my heart tighten. The story was starting to make sense. And she did it. Yes, replied Owain, her voice full of sadness. She gave up her dreams to become the perfect wife, the perfect mother. At least, that's what she was trying to be. She has shot a few more pages, showing photos of her mother over the years. The change was striking. The radiant smile had gradually faded, replaced by a more reserved, more constrained expression. I have never seen him paint, continued Orline. Not once throughout my childhood. She kept it all locked up, like a shameful secret. I listened in silence, starting to understand where the pressure came from which Line had always put on academic and professional success. I think that's why I always pushed Claire, and then David and you, towards respectable quarries, admitted Evelyn. I didn't want you to know the same disappointment as my mother. I wanted you to have the security and the status she had never had. She slowly closed the album, her shiny eyes with contained tears. But doing that, I almost made the same mistake. I almost stifled Lily's creativity, as my mother's dreams were suffocated. I stretched my hand and put it on that of Ravine. It was an instinctive gesture, born from the compassion that I suddenly felt for this woman that I had long considered my opponent. It's not too late, Owain, I said slowly. Lily still has all her future ahead of her. And she has a family who supports her, who encourages her to continue her passions. Ravine looked up at me, a gleam of gratitude in her gaze. You're right, she said. And I want to be part of it. I want to be the grandmother who encourages her, not the one who judges her. We stayed in silence for a while, leaving the weight of this revelation to settle between us. Then, Evelyn made a decision that surprised me. Sarah, she said, I would like you to take this album. I think Lily should see him. She should know this part of her family history. I was touched by this gesture. It was more than a simple gift of a family object, it was a Ford who shared a vulnerable part of herself, who trusted us to understand and appreciate this story. Thank you, Evelyn, I said, gently taking the album. I'm sure Lily will be fascinated by these photos. Before leaving that day, Evelyn surprised me once again. She hugged me, a gesture of affection that she had never had before. Thank you for being patient with me, she whispered. And thank you for being such a good mother for Lily. On the way back, the album carefully stored in my bag, I thought about everything I had just learned. The actions of Reveline, which had seemed so critical and hurtful to me for years, now took on a new meaning. It was not an excuse for his behavior, but it helped me to understand where his fears and expectations came from. That evening, after dinner, I showed the album in David and Lily. We spent hours leafing through the pages, admiring the photos of this great-grand artist that Lily had never known. She looks a bit like me, right? Said Lily, her eyes shining with excitement looking at the photo of the young woman with the easel. Yes, my darling, I answered, feeling my heart swelling with love and pride. You inherited his talent and his passion. Later that night, when David and I were lying in our bed, I shared with him all the details of my conversation with his mother. I would never have imagined, he said gently. Mom never talked about her own mother this way. I think she is starting to see things differently, I answered. She wants to change, David. She wants to do better. We remained silent for a moment, reflecting on this new understanding of our family history. You know, finally said David, I think it's the start of something new for all of us. A chance to heal old injuries and create new links. I nodded, feeling a mixture of hope and apprehension. The path would not be easy, I knew it. There would still be difficult moments, misunderstandings, old habits that would resurface. But for the first time, I had the impression that we all advanced in the same direction. That night, before falling asleep, I thought of the young woman in the photo, her interrupted dreams, and the way her story had shaped our family on generations. And I made a silent promise, not only in Lily, but also to this great-grandmother artist. We were going to break this cycle. We were going to create an environment where dreams were encouraged, where creativity was celebrated, where everyone was free to be authentically himself. It was a new chapter that opened for our family, a chapter of acceptance, understanding, and unconditional love. And I was ready to write it, one page at a time. The months following the revelation of Reveline brought a deep change in our family dynamic. Winter has arrived in Lyon, covering the city with a snow coat that seemed to suffocate old feelings and pave the way for a new start. One Saturday morning in January, while the flakes were slowly danced in front of our window, I received a Raval's call. His voice was animated by an excitement that I did not know him. Sarah, she said, I have an idea. Lily told me about her project for the art competition for her school. I was wondering if I could help him a certain way. I was surprised by this proposal, but pleasantly. Of course, Reveline. I'm sure Lily would be delighted. What do you think of coming to dine tonight? You could discuss it with her. There was a break on the other side of the line, as if Evelyn gathered his courage. In fact, she said slowly, I thought of something more ambitious. What would you say if I brought Lily to visit the Museum of Fine Arts tomorrow? For inspiration, you understand. I felt my heart jump. It was more than just outing proposal. It was a wine who reached out, who was trying to create an authentic link with her granddaughter. It's a great idea, I replied warmly. Lily will love it. The next day, I watched Lily leave with Surveyor, both wrapped in their winter coats, their scarves floating in the cold breeze. There was an excitement glimmer in my daughter's eyes, and for the first time, I saw a wine watching her with unconquered pride. During their absence, I worked on a design project, but my mind was constantly returning to Lily and a wine. I was wondering how their day was going, if they were able to communicate, to understand each other. When they returned at the end of the afternoon, their cheeks reddened by the cold and their eyes bright of enthusiasm, I knew that something had changed. Mom! Exclaimed Lily by rushing to me. It was incredible. Grandmother knows so much about art. She showed me paintings that I had never seen and explained the techniques used to me. And what do you know? She also draws. I looked up towards Exanine, surprised. She raised her shoulders with an embarrassed smile. Just a few sketches, she said modestly. Nothing extraordinary. But Lily did not agree. She took out from her bag a sketchbook that I did not recognize. Look, Mom, she said, stretching him out. Grandmother bought me that at the museum, and she made a drawing for me. I opened the notebook and I was amazed. On the first page, there was a magnificent Lily pencil sketch, sitting on a museum bench, absorbed by the contemplation of a painting. The drawing perfectly captured the expression of concentration and wonder on my daughter's face. Reveline, I whispered, it's magnificent. She blushed slightly. Oh, it's just a quick scratch. But it did me good to draw again. It's been so long. This day marked the start of a new tradition. Each Sunday, Evelyn took Lily to a different place from Lyon to draw, the Quays of Sayone, the Golden Head Park, the Basilica de Fourvière. Little by little, I saw Exlige opening, finding a part of herself that she had long suppressed. One evening, while we all dined together at a wine's, she made us a surprising announcement. I decided to take painting lessons, she said, her voice mixed with nervousness and excitation. At my age, it may not be very reasonable, but it's wonderful, Mom, exclaimed David, cutting her in his apologies. I'm so proud of you. Lily was ecstatic. We can paint together, Grandmother, she said with enthusiasm. I looked around, observing the smiling faces of my family. There was a lightness, a joy that had never been previously present in these family dinners. The months have passed, and spring has flourished again in Lyon. The Lily School art competition was approaching, and she worked hard on her project. One evening, when I helped her put her art supplies, she confided in me. You know, Mom, she said slowly, I'm really happy that Grandmother helps me with my art now. Before, I always had the impression that she didn't really love me. My heart hugged these words. Oh, my darling, I said, taking her in my arms. Your grandmother has always loved you. She just had trouble showing it. Lily hosted her head. I know. But now it's different. It's like she really saw me for the first time. The day of the competition finally arrived. Lily had created a series of paintings inspired by the different districts of Lyon, mixing traditional techniques with more modern elements. It was a remarkable job for a girl her age, showing an artistic maturity that surprised me. The whole family was there to support her, David and I, of course, but also Orline, who was standing straight and proud by our side. When the time has come to announce the winners, we all retained our breath. And the first prize in the junior category goes to Lily Dupont, for her series Lyon, City of Lights. The room broke out in applause. Lily rushed on stage, her face radiant with joy. But what moved me the most was the reaction of Reveline. Tears sank freely on her face, and she applauded stronger than anyone. After the ceremony, while we were preparing to leave to celebrate Lily's victory, Caroline took me apart. "Sarah," she said, her trembling voice with emotion, "I wanted to thank you." "Thank me?" I asked, surprised. "For what?" "In order not to have abandoned," she replied. "For having continued to believe in Lily, in his creativity, even when I did not do it. For having given me a chance to be part of all this." I felt tears get me in my eyes. "Reveline," I said slowly, "we are a family. We are there for each other, whatever happens." She nodded, a trembling smile. "I finally start to understand it. And I am so grateful to have this second chance." That evening, when we celebrate Lily's victory in our favorite restaurant on the quays of Sayone, I looked around. David laughed at a joke from his sister Claire, who had made the trip from Paris for the occasion. Lily proudly showed his price to her uncle and aunt. And Eveline. Caroline radiated, her gaze passing from one to the other with an obvious affection. I thought back to the path traveled, difficult times, misunderstandings, injuries. But I also thought of healing, growth, love that had finally triumphed over everything else. Our family was not perfect. We still had our disagreements, our moments of tension. But we had learned to listen to ourselves, to understand ourselves, to accept ourselves as we were. Later that night, when David and I were lying in our bed, listening to the sweet murmur of the sleeping city, I shared my reflections with him. "You know," I said slowly, "I think we finally found our balance. Not just the two of us, but the whole family." David shook my hand. "Yes," he replied. "And it's largely thanks to you, Sarah. Your patience, your understanding. You have helped us all grow." I smiled in the dark. "We did it together," I said. "All together." As I moved to sleep, I thought in the future. In Lily and his flourishing talent. To Surveyor and its rediscovery of art. To our family, finally united in our differences. It was not the end of our story, of course. It was rather the start of a new chapter. A chapter filled with possibilities, love, and the beauty that is born when we learn to accept each other, with our strengths and our weaknesses. And while the first lights of dawn began to light up the sky of Lyon, I knew, in the depths of my heart, that whatever the future has in store for us, we would face it together. As a family. United, strong, and full of love.